Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere warm. Not the cozy kind of warm, but the kind that smells like sun-baked limestone and sand that sticks to your sandals. You're standing by the Nile just before dawn, when the world is still half asleep, and the air hums with the promise of heat. Somewhere nearby, a priest grinds something in a shallow bowl, a pale powder that glitters faintly in the morning light. He looks up once, nods politely, and keeps stirring. You've just walked into the birth of toothpaste, and honestly, with the ingredients they used back then, you probably wouldn't survive a single brush without swearing loyalty to the gods first. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're watching from somewhere far away, maybe a quiet apartment in Tokyo, a rainy night in London, or under a fan humming softly in Saigon, leave a comment with your location and what time it is where you are. I love knowing who's drifting off around the world with me. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You take a step closer to the sound of the pestle tapping stone. Each tuk-tuk feels ancient, deliberate, the rhythm of centuries. The priest wears linen white as morning mist, his head shaved smooth. He murmurs something under his breath. Not a spell, not quite a prayer, more like a recipe disguised as devotion. Around him, the temple wakes up. Candles flicker. The smell of burning myrrh mixes with the salty breath of the river. You can almost taste it, that blend of ash, herbs, and ritual. It's both soothing and faintly awful, like brushing your teeth with the inside of a spice market. The priest doesn't seem to mind. For him, this isn't hygiene. It's holiness. The mouth, after all, was the entrance of speech, and speech the gift of gods. Keeping it clean wasn't vanity. It was reverence. You follow him through a hallway lined with hieroglyphs, some so old they look tired. A breeze curls in, carrying whispers of papyrus scrolls rustling somewhere unseen. This temple, you realize, is both a hospital and a library. The priests here heal the body the same way they heal the spirit, with words, oils, and things that smell like trouble. Somewhere in the distance, a novice sneezes after inhaling too much powdered limestone. You smile. Even thousands of years ago, interns had it rough. The priest gestures toward a low altar. Upon it rest small clay jars labeled in looping symbols, natron, charred bones, crushed iris petals. Each ingredient has a purpose. Salt to scour, ashes to purify, flowers to perfume. It's strange. The same instinct that drives you to floss after dinner also drove them to mix sand into their smiles. He dips his finger into the bowl and tastes it. Just a tap on the tongue. You wince. He nods approvingly, as if pain itself is proof of cleanliness. A bite of purity, he might say if he spoke your language. The morning light makes his eyes gleam like molten amber. You notice how calm everything feels here. Even the pigeons cooing on the roof sound polite. Maybe that's what centuries of rituals do. They smooth the edges off reality. You start to understand this toothpaste wasn't just about teeth. It was about control. Over decay, over smell, over time itself. Because in Egypt, to rot was to vanish. To stay clean was to stay remembered. The priest finishes grinding, then wipes the rim of the bowl with careful hands. You catch the faint scratch of stone against stone, a sound that has outlived empires. He scoops the powder into a tiny linen pouch and sets it beside a golden cup. Tomorrow he'll mix it with water, maybe a drop of honey, and hand it to the high priest before dawn prayers. You glance out the doorway. The sun finally crests the horizon, spilling molten light over the Nile. Boats drift past like half-forgotten dreams. Somewhere a fisherman yawns, stretching his arms to the sky. Life begins again, but so does cleanliness. You breathe in deep. The air tastes faintly of salt and dust. You can't help but think how far this story travels. From temple mortar to your bathroom shelf. Different millennia, same morning routine. Somewhere behind you the priest chuckles softly, perhaps amused by your curiosity. Or maybe by the absurdity of brushing with ashes. Either way, you grin back. It's a good sound, low human, timeless. The walls shimmer in the heat. You hear chanting start, low and steady, vibrating through the floor. The smell of incense grows heavier. A sense of calm seeps into your skin. And just like that, you're part of the rhythm, the grinding, the prayer. The simple act of keeping one small corner of the world clean. Some historians still debate whether this tooth powder was truly effective or merely ceremonial. Maybe it didn't polish enamel so much as polish the soul. But as the light flickers across ancient stone, you feel that doesn't matter much. What matters is the tenderness of the effort, the quiet insistence that even the smallest ritual deserves devotion. The bowl rests. The chanting fades. You exhale slowly, letting the warmth settle around you. Somewhere the Nile keeps flowing. Somewhere someone still brushes their teeth before facing the day. And the story, like the river, keeps going. The temple corridors stretch ahead, cool and dim against the blaze outside. You follow the faint sound of chanting, a rhythm that seems to breathe through the sandstone. Somewhere behind a curtain of woven reeds, you hear the grinding again, the slow, steady, like a heartbeat turned to stone. You slip inside a side chamber where the air smells faintly of honey. Herbs and something sharper, maybe vinegar or crushed rock. A priest in a clean white robe leans over a wooden table, arranging rows of tiny jars. His fingers move with a surgeon's precision. In this world you realize priests aren't just spiritual guides. They are the doctors, the pharmacists, the record keepers of the human body. And sometimes it's repairmen. The man glances at you briefly, his coal-lined eyes calm. He gestures for you to come closer. You obey, padding across the smooth floor, half expecting to wake up from this dream. The closer you get, the more you notice. A faint hum in the walls, a tremor of beeswax candles, the scratch of a quill somewhere in the next room. The temple is alive, not loud, but alive in that way libraries are when the words themselves seem to breathe. The priest dips a reed brush into a bowl of liquid, tests it against the back of his hand, and smiles. Not too hot, he mutters as if talking to himself. The gods hate impatience. You stifle a laugh. Somewhere in the modern world, a dentist says the same thing before applying fluoride. You notice a large scroll resting on a low stand. The papyrus is faded but full of drawings. Molars, roots, even the outline of a jawbone. The text flows around them like a river. You can't read it, but your eyes catch a phrase that repeats over and over, the ancient equivalent of rinse and repeat. It's strange to think how ancient this knowledge is. The Egyptians didn't separate medicine from magic, or hygiene from holiness. To heal the body was to honor the gods. To clean the mouth was to restore purity to speech. And so temples like this one doubled as hospitals. The same hands that burned incense for Osiris also mixed powders for toothaches. You glance around and see other priests, younger ones, maybe apprentices, preparing salves and tonics. One stirs a pot of honey with a carved stick, humming softly. Another grinds herbs into a paste so green it looks like melted jade. The smells overlap until your nose tingles. Mint, cinnamon, ash, and something earthy you can't quite name. You wonder how they learned all this. No medical school. No YouTube tutorials. Just centuries of observation, trial, and maybe divine patience. When someone broke a tooth or complained of pain, they didn't shrug it off as fate. They studied it. They recorded symptoms, measured herbs, tested proportions. They believed pain had patterns, and every pattern had a cure. Every illness, the elder priest says quietly, as if reading your mind, is a question the gods ask us. Every cure is our answer. You nod, not because you fully understand, but because it feels like the right thing to do. He smiles faintly and points to a clay jar sealed with wax. That one, he says, is for the mouth. You can almost guess what's inside. Maybe the ancestor of toothpaste, or something more sacred. The priest taps it gently with the back of a spoon. It keeps words clean, he adds. You tilt your head. Words? He chuckles. What else passes through the mouth that must be purified? Okay, he's got you there. Even 4,000 years ago, gossip was probably a public health concern. As you look around, you realize these priests had to master every layer of existence, body, mind, and spirit. They were part dentist, part philosopher, part social therapist. The papyrus scrolls show diagrams of hearts and tongues, but also prayers written in between measurements, as though medicine wasn't complete without poetry. One fragment near your elbow reads something like, "To speak clearly, cleanse the mouth with natron before dawn." Natron, you remember, the natural salt used for mummification. The same ingredient that preserved the dead also protected the living from decay. You picture a priest carefully rubbing his teeth with that gritty salt, grimacing as the taste hits. No mint flavor, just holiness and mild suffering. You can't help but grin. Modern toothpaste ads would never get away with that slogan, burning pain, now with extra piety. The priest, oblivious to your amusement, adjusts the wick of a small oil lamp. The light flickers across the wall, revealing painted scenes of healers tending to the sick, of gods inspecting tongues, of servants holding bowls of water. In each, the act of cleansing is central, a ritual, a rhythm. You start to notice how seamlessly their world blends the physical and the spiritual. Healing isn't a matter of pills, but balance. Every ailment reflects a disturbance. In the body, yes, but also in the universe. Fix one and you mend the other. Some historians still debate whether these priests truly understood anatomy or simply mimicked patterns they saw in nature. The branching of the Nile, the symmetry of a lotus, the pulse of the stars. Maybe both. Maybe that's what makes their science feel so human. It wasn't cold logic. It was empathy turned into practice. The elder priest moves toward a doorway leading to a darker chamber. He beckons for you to follow. The air changes, cooler, damp, carrying the faint scent of old herbs. You pass shelves stacked with linen-wrapped bundles, labeled in hieratic script. Prescriptions, he explains softly, some older than the temple itself. You trail your fingers along the jars and smooth, cool, timeless. You imagine generations of healers touching the same clay, whispering the same hopes. Maybe one of them cured a pharaoh's toothache. Maybe another failed and his recipe was quietly buried with him. History has a way of keeping score that no one can read. Do you ever forget which mixture is which? You ask. He chuckles again. Sometimes. Then I taste it. If it burns, it's probably for the mouth. You can't help laughing. Somewhere across millennia, every dentist who's ever said open wide nods in solidarity. You stay a while longer, watching the younger priests at work. The rhythm of their movements becomes hypnotic. Grind, stir, pour, label, repeat. The temple's hum deepens. Outside, sunlight begins to pierce through the slits in the stone walls, turning the dust in the air into golden threads. And you find yourself thinking, maybe this is what real peace looks like. Not silence, but harmony. The harmony of hands that know exactly what they're doing. The elder priest places a hand on your shoulder, firm, warm, grounding. Tomorrow, he says, we make the sacred powder. Come before sunrise, you nod. He nods back as if confirming something much older than agreement, a shared curiosity that bridges languages and time. You step outside. The air hits you like an oven door opening, hot and dry and real. The Nile glitters in the distance, lazy and eternal. For a moment, the hum of the temple fades behind you, but its rhythm stays in your chest. Steady, patient, unhurried. You've just spent the morning with the doctors of the divine, and tomorrow you'll learn what happens when medicine meets ritual and salt meets prayer. The sand crunches softly beneath your feet as you walk back toward the light. The smell of the temple lingers on your skin, warm incense and the faint metallic taste of salt. You're still standing by that low stone table, where the light from the oil lamp wobbles across the surface, and the sound of something being crushed in a mortar fills the chamber. The rhythmic thud-thud is oddly hypnotic, like a steady heartbeat inside the temple walls. You tilt your head, and for the first time you see what's really in that bowl. Not spices, not sacred paint, but the world's first toothpaste, or at least what would become it. You watch as a priest, his hands rough from grinding stone and herbs, leans over the basin. He doesn't measure anything with spoons or scales. He measures by memory and belief. A pinch of salt, sharp and white as crushed seashells, a handful of dried iris petals, crumbling like paper between his fingers. A puff of ash taken from yesterday's incense, drifting through the air like ghostly smoke, before settling into the mix. He adds one more thing, a twist of rock pepper, small dark grains that sting the air and your nose. The scent is strange, bitter, earthy with the faint sweetness of old roses. You cough softly and one of the older priests chuckles without looking up. Purity stings, he murmurs in a low voice, half amused, half warning. His teeth flash white against the lamplight, surprisingly well kept for someone living 3,000 years before the invention of dental floss. The pestle moves again, stone against stone, a sound as ancient as prayer itself. You can almost feel it in your jaw, that subtle ache that comes from the thought of grinding things down. Time, bone, sand, life. The powder thickens. The salt breaks apart. The fragrance deepens. The priest dips a finger into it, rubs it between his fingertips and nods. This, he says softly, is how we begin the day of the gods. You glance at him, thinking how mundane it all looks, just a bowl of greyish grit. But in that time it was alchemy. The Egyptians believed every scent carried a spirit, every texture a power. They didn't just clean their teeth, they cleansed their souls. And that makes you smile because somewhere deep inside, maybe you've done something similar. Brushing your teeth before an interview, a date, or a funeral. As if minty breath might somehow make life a little easier to face, the air grows thicker. The heat presses against your skin, and your imagination paints the past in motion. Lines of priests at dawn, walking barefoot across cool limestone floors, holding small bowls of powder. Some recipes were reserved for the living. Others for the dead. For the living, salt and iris to strengthen the gums. For the dead, incense ash and myrrh, to sweeten their mouths in the afterlife where even silence must smell divine. It's curious, isn't it? That humanity's obsession with fresh breath began not with vanity but with reverence. These priests weren't trying to impress anyone. They were trying to speak to gods. And who dares pray with a foul mouth? You lean closer. The younger apprentice takes the pestle now, struggling a bit under its weight. He crushes, pauses, wipes sweat from his temple. The older man corrects his grip, then smiles in that patient way only teachers do. The sound resumes, thud, grind, thud, grind. It's steady, meditative. Do you imagine this was their morning ritual for centuries? Not just hygiene, but devotion made tactile. Salt for preservation, ash for purification, flowers for fragrance, pepper for vitality. Every ingredient symbolized a part of the human spirit. Together they made something greater, a balance between body and divinity. A gust of wind slips through the temple doorway, and the powder scatters in a soft cloud, dusting the floor with gray. One of the priests mutters under his breath a tiny prayer for forgiveness. Losing a handful of this mixture isn't just waste, it's sacrilege. You can tell how much it matters from the way he carefully sweeps every grain back into the bowl. And then you realize this isn't just chemistry. It's choreography. Every motion has been perfected through repetition. Lift, crush, breathe, stir. It's like the world's earliest laboratory, except the experiment is faith itself. You wonder if they ever questioned the process. If one morning a weary priest thought, what if the gods don't care about our breath at all? But then again, maybe it doesn't matter. Because faith, like brushing, is a habit. Something you do not because you always understand it, but because it keeps the rot away. The older priest looks up, his face lined like a dried riverbed. He picks up a small reed spoon and transfers the paste into a tiny alabaster jar. The vessel gleams faintly under the lamplight. You know this is something that might one day end up in a pharaoh's tomb, sealed for eternity beside jars of honey and perfume. Imagine that. Even the dead needed clean teeth. You can almost see the note that would be left behind for the embalmers. Mix salt and myrrh. Grind fine. Apply before final prayers. Some historians still argue about this, whether the Egyptians truly used this mixture for dental care or if it was purely symbolic. Maybe both. After all, the line between hygiene and holiness has always been blurry. What begins as ritual can become routine. What begins as medicine can turn into myth. Outside, the Nile hums with its low eternal voice, and you hear faint laughter from the courtyard. Someone jokes that the gods must have the whitest smiles in the universe by now. Everyone laughs softly, careful not to echo too loud inside sacred walls. You smile too because that humor feels timeless. People haven't changed much. We still find jokes in the rituals that keep us sane. At least they didn't have to floss, you whisper to yourself, and it makes you giggle under your breath. The older priest gestures for the apprentice to bring another bowl. Again, he says simply, every sunrise. You realize this is their version of a morning routine, except instead of toothpaste tubes and electric brushes, it's stone mortars and flower petals. Yet the purpose is the same, to start the day feeling clean, renewed, and ready to face something greater than themselves. As the morning sun creeps through the lattice windows, catching on the floating dust, the whole room glows golden. It's quiet except for the steady scrape of grinding and the soft rustle of linen robes. You close your eyes, imagining the texture of that ancient paste between your fingers, rough but fragrant, a strange mix of earth and holiness. You wonder what it would taste like, probably like licking a brick soaked in perfume. You laugh again quietly. For you definitely wouldn't survive Egyptian toothpaste, you think, but there's something beautiful about it too, that humanity's search for purity could begin with something so humble. Salt and ash, Two symbols of endurance. Two reminders that even decay can be turned into devotion. The priest sets down his tools, wiping his hands on his robe. "It is ready," he says, and for a moment everything stills. The light, the dust, the air itself seems to pause in respect. You feel a strange calm settle over you, the kind that only comes when ancient hands finish something eternal. Somewhere, far in the future, you imagine another person standing in their bathroom, toothbrush in hand, mint foam on their lips, doing the exact same thing, cleansing the day before it even begins. Maybe that's the secret, you think. Not the ingredients, but the intention. You breathe in deeply. The scent of ground salt and roses fills your lungs, warm and oddly comforting. The sound of the mortar fades, replaced by the soft rhythm of your own heartbeat. And as the temple dissolves into shadow, you realize this too was always part of the human story. The need to begin each day clean, not just in body but in spirit. The first toothpaste wasn't meant for teeth. It was meant for the soul. The temple hums with a low murmur, soft chanting, the shuffle of sandals over stone, the delicate echo of water poured from clay jars. You linger near the threshold, where sunlight drips in gold over the pillars, and the smell of crushed salt still clings to your fingertips. Around you, the morning begins not with noise, but with ritual. You realize slowly that even something as small as brushing one's teeth is sacred here. Not vanity, not routine, but a prayer in motion. A group of priests gathers in a semicircle, each holding a small bowl of the grayish paste. You watch them dip their fingers into the mixture, rubbing it carefully across their teeth, their gums, their tongues. The air is thick with fragrance, ash, myrrh, and dried iris mingling into something almost divine. It doesn't smell pleasant, not exactly, but it feels important. Like breathing incense instead of air. You can't help but wince at the gritty texture they must feel on their tongues. You, with your soft mint gels and electric toothbrush, would last maybe 10 seconds before crying for mercy. You think about saying it aloud. You'd never survive Egyptian toothpaste, but you keep it to yourself, smiling instead. Humor doesn't belong in sacred halls, at least not too loudly. The youngest among them, a novice barely grown, hesitates before he begins. The elder beside him gives a small nod, and the boy presses the paste to his lips. His expression wavers between devotion and discomfort. You almost laugh. That's the universal face of "this burns a little." But he keeps going because this act isn't about comfort. It's about purification. To the Egyptians, the mouth was more than flesh and bone. It was the gate of the soul, the path through which prayers, breath, and spirit traveled. To cleanse it was to prepare it for the divine. They called it the opening of the mouth, a ritual that began long before burials and mummification turned it into theater. In daily life, it meant this. Before you could speak to the gods, you had to make your words clean. You notice how carefully they move, each motion synchronized. They rinse their mouths with cool water from the Nile, spit it into a basin carved with lotus motifs, and then anoint their lips with oil scented with cedar. The act is neither rushed nor dramatic. It's calm, deliberate. Like yoga for the souls, except, well, with more ash and less stretching. A priest begins to chant, his voice low, vibrating through the sandstone walls. The others repeat the words, their tones weaving together like threads in linen. You can't understand the language, but you can feel the intention, a rhythm that feels both ancient and oddly familiar. You catch phrases that sound like invocations of light, purity, and the breath of Ra. You imagine this ritual happening every morning across Egypt, in temples along the Nile, in dusty villages, even in royal chambers where servants prepared mixtures of salt and crushed mint for their masters. Hygiene wasn't a separate part of religion. It was religion. To cleanse oneself was to honor life itself, to mirror the order of the cosmos. It's strange to think about how modern you suddenly feel. You brush your teeth out of habit, barely awake, thinking about meetings or breakfast. But here, every scrape, every rinse, every breath is a sacred reminder. You are alive. You are clean. You are ready to speak truth. One priest finishes first. He sets down his bowl and kneels, bowing his head low to the ground. The others follow, the movement so fluid you wonder how many centuries of repetition made it so graceful. You think about the phrase ritual hygiene, and it almost makes you laugh, because for them, there's no almost. Cleanliness is next to godliness, and here it's literal. Somewhere behind you, a soft breeze slips through the temple doorway, carrying the scent of wet clay and river water. Dust motes float in the light like tiny stars. You're caught for a moment between the divine and the domestic, between myth and muscle memory. It's just brushing teeth, you think, and yet somehow it feels like prayer. A few historians still debate whether these daily purifications were meant for hygiene or entirely symbolic. Some argue the abrasives would have destroyed enamel rather than preserved it, that the Egyptians didn't understand the science, only the sanctity. Others say the formula was surprisingly effective, that they were the first true dentists without realizing it. You smile at the thought. History is full of people doing the right thing for the wrong reason, or the wrong thing for the right one. The elder priest lifts a small bronze mirror, its surface polished to near perfection. He inspects his reflection, the lines on his face, the calm in his eyes. Not vanity, but vigilance. He must appear pure to the gods, inside and out. You wonder if he ever looked at his reflection and thought about mortality. The way we do, catching ourselves in the mirror at night, toothpaste foam around our mouths, wondering where time went. You glance again at the young novice, who now seems calmer. His earlier grimace has softened into quiet focus. Maybe that's the point. Discomfort giving way to devotion. Like a workout for the spirit, you think, except no one's filming it for Instagram. A small bell rings. The ritual ends. The priests wash their hands in a shared bowl, then press their palms together in silent prayer. The echo fades, and what remains is peace, the kind of silence that fills you up rather than empties you out. Outside, the temple courtyard is waking. Servants sweep the sand, birds dart between palm fronds, and the Nile glitters like a strip of molten glass. You step out into the warmth, the sunlight brushing your face, and for a moment you understand. The ritual wasn't just about worship. It was about connection, to the self, to the earth, to the rhythm of something vast and unseen. You exhale slowly, almost expecting to see your breath shimmer in the golden air. There's a sweetness to it now, faint and floral, like the memory of crushed iris and myrrh. You smile, imagining how your breath must smell if you'd used their recipe, probably like a burnt bouquet. You chuckle softly, then glance back toward the temple. Inside, the priests are moving again, preparing for the morning prayers. Each step, each gesture flows into the next. Sacred, practiced, inevitable. That strikes you then. This is what faith looks like when it's lived, not spoken. A flicker of thought crosses your mind. How rituals evolve, how they survive. One day the paste will turn to powder, the powder to mint gel, the temple to a bathroom mirror. But the essence will remain. Humans will always start the day the same way. Cleansing, preparing, whispering a small prayer to no one in particular that today, somehow they'll be a little better. You close your eyes, letting the warmth seep into your skin. The murmur of the Nile grows softer. For a heartbeat, it feels like the world is holding its breath, waiting, shining, sacred. And then you realize something simple, something quietly profound. Maybe the gods never needed clean mouths. Maybe we did. To remind ourselves that even the smallest act, done with care, can be divine. You smile again, feeling the grain of the sand under your feet, the memory of ash and salt on your fingertips, and the rhythm of ritual still echoing in your pulse. For a moment, everything at faith, hygiene, history feels perfectly aligned. And as you walk away from the temple, you carry that feeling with you. The strange peace of knowing that somewhere between brushing and believing, humanity found its first kind of grace. The morning air along the Nile feels heavy, almost holy. The horizon blushes pink, and the first rays of sunlight spill over the temple walls, glinting off jars of bronze and bowls of crushed minerals. You follow a young priest, his linen robe crisp and white, his sandals whispering over the cool stone floor. In his hands, he carries a small alabaster bowl, filled with that same powder you saw last night, the strange, fragrant mix of salt, ashes, and dried petals. But this morning it's different. This isn't just hygiene. This is ritual. This is the moment when the gods themselves must be purified. He moves with quiet precision, as if every gesture has been practiced for 1,000 years. The temple is waking. Echoes of footsteps, the rustle of incense smoke, a single ibis calling from somewhere near the water. You watch him approach the statue of Horus, the falcon god, his golden eyes fixed forward, eternal and unmoving. The priest dips his fingers into the powder, mixes it with a few drops of Nile water, and begins to cleanse the mouth of the god. Yes, even gods apparently need dental care. If only your own dentist had half this sense of ceremony. He murmurs words you can't quite catch, rhythmic, hypnotic, not prayer exactly, but not entirely speech either. You imagine the vibration of the sound resonating through the marble, through the centuries, through you. Each word feels like it's scrubbing something invisible. And perhaps that's the point, that cleanliness isn't about removing dirt, but about aligning one's inner rhythm with something divine. As the priest polishes the statue's lips, you catch the glimmer of gold dust. He rubs carefully, reverently. The mixture he uses leaves behind a faint sheen, not unlike a shimmer of toothpaste foam if toothpaste were made by alchemists. You realize that to these priests, this act isn't about oral hygiene. It's about maintaining the balance between purity and decay, between the mortal and the eternal. There's something strangely moving about it, this blend of science and spirit. You think about your own morning routine, brushing your teeth half awake, scrolling through your phone, maybe listening to a podcast about productivity. And here, thousands of years ago, someone is doing the same essential act, but with the weight of eternity behind it. It's funny how we've managed to turn ritual into routine. You almost envy them. The scent of frankincense swells as the ceremony continues. The priest rinses his hands in a bronze basin. Another acolyte brings a small reed brush, soft and frayed at the tip. Together they brush the statue's teeth, if one can say that about a mouth carved from obsidian. The brush dips into the mixture, dabs gently, circles in small practiced motions. The sound, a soft scraping over stone, is oddly satisfying, like the whisper of sand over papyrus. Some historians still debate whether this daily cleansing was purely symbolic or if the priests genuinely believed the gods could decay without it. One papyrus even describes the foulness that gathers in the mouths of idols, a poetic way perhaps of saying even divinity must be refreshed. You smile to yourself. Maybe the ancient Egyptians just wanted to make sure their gods never had morning breath. When the ritual ends, the priest bows deeply and steps back. He looks calm, centered, as if something inside him has been polished too. You notice his teeth when he smiles slightly in your direction. White, yes, but not unnaturally so. They're a little rough, a little stained by years of herbs and ash, yet somehow proud, as though he knows the same secrets he's just whispered to the gods. He turns and leads you to a basin near the outer courtyard. The sunlight has brightened now, and the Nile glitters beyond the temple walls. He motions for you to wash your own mouth, a gesture of inclusion. You hesitate. The bowl beside you holds the same powder, faintly pink from crushed rose petals, faintly salty from the sea. You dip your finger, feel the fine grit between your fingertips. It smells sharp, earthy, and ancient. You taste it just barely, and immediately regret it. The bitterness hits your tongue like chewing a brick dipped in perfume. The priest chuckles softly, not unkindly. You can't help but laugh too. Though your mouth feels like it's been sandblasted by history itself, there's something humbling in that taste. It's not meant for comfort. It's meant for discipline, for remembering that cleanliness is a sacred labor, not a convenience. You think of modern toothpaste commercials, all glittering smiles and minty promises. The Egyptians didn't care about freshness. They cared about virtue. Their clean was moral as much as physical. As the priest finishes tidying the altar, you notice a small inscription carved into the base of the statue. It reads in smooth hieroglyphs, "The mouth of the god is open. The world is made pure." Scholars later called this ritual the opening of the mouth, a ceremony performed not just for statues, but for the dead, to restore the senses in the afterlife. The act of brushing, of cleansing, of touching the lips, all symbols of reawakening, so that the soul could breathe, speak, and taste eternity again. You step outside with the priest as the ceremony concludes. The air feels lighter, cleaner somehow, though it might just be the wind off the river. The city is coming alive. Market stalls clattering open, fishermen calling out, a child laughing as he splashes water onto a donkey. The scent of life, warm, chaotic, human, fills your lungs. You imagine everyone here, from the lowest servant to the highest priest, starting their day with some form of washing, cleansing, purifying. Maybe that's what civilization really is, the shared belief that the world can be made clean again each morning. You glance back one last time. Inside the shadowed temple, the golden falcon gleams. His mouth, now polished and gleaming, reflects a sliver of sunlight, a reminder that even gods need tending. You wonder if centuries from now, someone might look at your own toothbrush the same way, a sacred tool of renewal, humble but holy. Maybe they'll place it in a museum and whisper about your rituals, how you stood before the mirror, foaming at the mouth, eyes half closed, reciting your own silent prayers to start the day. As the Nile breeze brushes your cheek, you realize the difference between routine and ritual is only attention. The priests of Egypt didn't invent toothpaste for vanity. They did it to preserve harmony between flesh and spirit. And though your life looks nothing like theirs, maybe, just maybe when you brush your teeth tomorrow, you'll pause for a heartbeat and remember this morning in Thebes, the grinding of sacred powders, the murmured prayers, and the soft smile of a priest who brushed the mouth of a god. The wind shifts. The incense fades. Somewhere deep inside the temple, a bronze bell rings softly, as if marking the end of a ceremony you didn't realize you were part of. You walk away, the taste of salt and ash still lingering faintly, a reminder that purity is not perfection. It's simply the act of beginning again. The scent of crushed petals still lingers in the air when you follow the priest deeper into the temple's inner chamber. The sunlight no longer reaches here. Only thin lines of gold filter through carved stone slits, slicing the darkness like sacred geometry. The air feels thicker, filled with the ghostly perfume of things burned long ago. Resins, dried herbs, perhaps even tears of frankincense that melted and never left. On a low alabaster table rests a collection of small clay jars, their necks sealed with linen and beeswax. The priest motions for you to come closer. He unties one lid and a soft puff of fragrant dust escapes, catching the light. You lean in and the smell is sharp, salty, and faintly floral. It's both pleasant and unsettling, like a memory you didn't know you had. The priest says, almost in a whisper, that this is the mixture used by his order for purification. Rock salt, burnt flowers, and myrrh. You repeat the word quietly, myrrh, feeling it roll slow on your tongue. It sounds ancient, like it carries weight. He nods and his eyes seem to reflect a fire that isn't there. Myrrh, he explains, is not just a scent but a presence. It's what connects the living to the divine. Burn it, and it rises like prayer. Grind it, and it becomes medicine. Mix it with salt, and it guards against decay. To the ancient Egyptians, it wasn't merely a plant's resin. It was the concentrated essence of life resisting death. You watch him grind a piece of it against a slab of basalt. The pestle moves in slow circles, patient and sure. The sound, that rhythmic scrape of stone against stone, feels hypnotic, like time itself being ground into powder. He adds a pinch of dried rose petals, then a measure of rock salt from the Red Sea. Each grain sparkles faintly. The mixture looks like desert dust laced with starlight. Every ingredient, he says softly, has a spirit. You can almost believe him. The air around the bowl seems alive, the fragrance swelling, fading, swirling between heat and sweetness. It's not science, not yet. It's reverence disguised as chemistry. He gestures for you to try. The pestle fits awkwardly in your hand, heavier than you expected. As you press it down, the grit bites back against the stone. You feel resistance, like the mixture doesn't want to be broken. You grind anyway, and the sound deepens, rough then smooth. The scent grows stronger, sharper. You cough once, and the priest laughs softly. The first time, he says, it always bites back. You smile, eyes watering, thinking maybe modern toothpaste companies could take notes, though their commercials might be less glamorous if they included tears and smoke. He begins telling you stories of how each element came to be part of the recipe. Salt, he says, is sacred because it preserves, it holds life still against decay. In ancient spells, it was the boundary between purity and corruption. Ashes came from the temple fires that burned through the night, a reminder that all matter transforms, but nothing is truly lost. Flowers, particularly rose and iris, were offerings to the goddess Hathor, who ruled over beauty, love, and laughter. Even she, he jokes quietly, needed her breath to smell divine. And myrrh, always myrrh, was the bridge between this world and the next. It embalmed the dead, perfumed the living, and healed the sick. You think of how many thousands of years humans have loved a good multitasking product. The priest pauses, his eyes turning toward the hieroglyphs on the wall, long lines of symbols etched into the limestone. He explains that each symbol of the recipe is drawn beside a god's name, salt beside Isis, ashes beside Osiris, and myrrh beside Anubis, the guardian of death. Because, and he says, What cleans the mouth also cleans thee. So you sense he isn't speaking metaphorically. Historians still debate whether the priests actually believed these materials were inhabited by divine forces or if it was all symbolic, language, poetry for the sake of reverence. Either way, standing here in this dim room, you can feel why the question doesn't matter. The distinction between faith and function blurs like dust in sunlight. The priest adds the last ingredient, ground pepper. You blink in surprise. Pepper? He grins, seeing your confusion. It wakes the spirit, he says, and it keeps the breath from going still. You can't help but think, and somewhere in ancient Egypt, there must have been one very bold taste tester. When he finally finishes, the mixture looks complete, pale grey with soft pink and dark flecks, smelling both clean and mysterious. He sprinkles a few grains onto his palm and holds it up to you. This, he says, is the breath of the earth. You hesitate before tasting it again, but curiosity wins. The powder touches your tongue. Bitter at first, then a strange wave of heat and sweetness. The pepper prickles. The myrrh numbs slightly. It feels alive. Not pleasant exactly, but powerful. You feel it travel up into your sinuses, clearing everything in its path. See, he smiles. The gods approve. You laugh, half choking, half impressed. You can't decide if it's toothpaste or spiritual warfare. He tells you that this very mixture was once offered to the pharaoh himself. Only the royal household used the finest versions, with ground turquoise and honey added, to please both the palate and the divine. There's even a story, he says, of a pharaoh who insisted his servants polish his teeth before every public speech, because his smile was a symbol of cosmic balance. The shine of his teeth reflected the sun god Ra's perfection. Imagine your dentist trying to explain that during a cleaning. Outside you hear a low rumble of the wind, picking up over the river. The light through the narrow openings flickers, making the motes of powder seem to dance. The priest looks up, thoughtful. Each morning, he says, we must remember that our mouths speak truth or lies, blessings or curses. So we clean them, not just for health but for harmony. You think about that for a long moment, how in modern times brushing your teeth is mostly a chore, something done on autopilot. Yet here every motion was a reminder that what leaves your mouth has power, that the act of cleansing it is an act of respect, for yourself, for others, for the divine. The priest packs a small pinch of the powder into a linen pouch and places it in your hand. Carry it, he says, and remember, purity begins with the smallest acts. His voice is soft, but the weight of his words settles deep. As you step back toward the sunlight, the smell of myrrh clings to your skin. It's warm, golden, and faintly bitter, the kind of scent that follows you even after you've left the room. You glance back once more at the jars, lined neatly like tiny guardians of forgotten chemistry. Somewhere far in the future, scientists will uncover traces of these ingredients in tombs and call them primitive toothpaste. They'll run analyses, publish papers, measure abrasiveness. But you, standing here in the soft breath of incense and stone, understand something more intimate, that this mixture was never about vanity. It was a prayer disguised as powder. The wind carries the scent of the Nile, wet clay and sunlight. You close your hand around the pouch and step outside. The world feels older now, wiser, and a little more fragrant. And as you breathe in, a faint taste of myrrh still lingers on your tongue, reminding you that some stories don't wash away. The torches flicker softer now, painting the temple walls in gold and shadow. You follow a corridor lined with hieroglyphs, each curve and symbol like a whisper of something sacred. Ahead, there's a low murmur, the kind of sound that makes you walk slower as if afraid to disturb the air itself. When you turn the corner, you see it. A chamber glowing with reflected sunlight, caught and redirected by polished bronze mirrors. And there, standing still as statues, are the royal attendants. They're waiting, bowls in hand, for the arrival of someone whose smile, yes, that smile has been carved on monuments, painted on tombs, sung in prayers. It's the pharaoh's morning ritual. You notice one of the older priests, face wrinkled like a dried papyrus leaf, holding a small alabaster jar. Inside that same fine powder you've seen before, the mixture of salt, ash, myrrh, and crushed petals now glitters faintly in the light. A whisper passes through the room, a rhythm you recognize, purity before power, purity before prayer. The pharaoh steps forward, cloaked in linen so white it almost glows. There's a strange intimacy in this moment, before the ceremonies, before the crowd. before the heavy golden mask. The pharaoh tilts his head as a servant brings forth a bronze mirror, and the priest gently begins to apply the powder to his teeth using a small stick wrapped in linen. You can almost hear the faint rasp of the grains against enamel. The sound is oddly soothing, like sand shifting in a breeze. This is no ordinary morning routine. To cleanse the pharaoh's mouth is to cleanse his words, the very breath he uses to speak to the gods. His smile is not vanity, it's divinity made visible. When he smiles upon his subjects, they see harmony, order, and divine favor. When he doesn't, they tremble. You can't help but think. Imagine if your boss's mood depended on whether they had brushed properly that morning. The priest recites softly, "That which enters the mouth must be worthy of the gods, and that which leaves it must carry truth." You realize this moment, simple as it seems, binds together religion, health, and politics. A single act of hygiene becomes a ritual of power. As you watch, the pharaoh spits into a golden bowl. Yes, even divinity must spit sometimes, and rinses his mouth with water perfumed by lotus petals. The attendants then seal the bowl, as though even this water now holds holiness. You can almost smell the mix of lotus and salt, the scent of clean ritual. Nearby, a young scribe is sketching the scene onto a small piece of limestone. His stylus moves quickly, capturing not just the act but the posture, the reverence. You step closer, and he whispers to you without looking up. They say his teeth are white as the moon at its birth. He grins slightly, adding, "Some of us think it's because the priests grind too much salt into that powder. But who would argue with the moon?" Historians still debate whether these rituals were daily or reserved for special ceremonies, whether pharaohs actually brushed their own teeth or had it done for them. But here in this hush of incense and ritual, the truth doesn't matter much. What matters is belief. The idea that cleanliness itself was sacred, that even the smallest gesture could maintain the balance of Ma'at. The cosmic order. You think back to your own toothbrush at home, plastic, mass-produced, sitting next to a half-empty tube of mint paste. Somehow it feels like a distant descendant of this very moment. The same purpose, minus the chanting and the gold bowls. Though honestly, if you had to brush under the watchful eyes of 10 attendants, you might floss more regularly. The ritual continues. The pharaoh closes his eyes as the priest anoints his lips with oil, mixed with crushed peppermint leaves. A cooling, fragrant finish. The scent rises, crisp and clean, and you catch a faint smile on the pharaoh's face. It's subtle, almost human. For a brief instant you see not a god, but a man. Someone who, despite the titles and crowns, probably hates the taste of salt just as much as you would. The attendants begin to hum, a low harmonic tone that vibrates in your chest. It's not music exactly, more like breath turned into devotion. The sound swells softly as the ritual nears its end. The pharaoh opens his mouth once more, speaking a short prayer that sounds both gentle and absolute. You don't understand the words, but you feel their weight as though the air itself bends to listen. When it's done, the priest steps back, bows deeply, and signals for the mirrors to be covered. The light fades, replaced again by the flickering torches. You realize you've been holding your breath, as though afraid to disturb the sanctity of the moment. The pharaoh turns, his newly purified smile faintly catching the firelight. It's dazzling and intimidating. You can see why poets and subjects alike would call it divine. Outside, the first sunlight spills across the Nile. The river mirrors the sky in a ripple of gold. Somewhere a heron glides low, wings whispering above the water. The day begins, not with speeches or decrees, but with a mouth cleansed in ritual purity. As the pharaoh departs, the attendants begin to pack away the jars and bowls. One of them, younger than the rest, looks curious, like you. He picks up the alabaster jar and sniffs it, wrinkling his nose. "Too strong," he mutters under his breath, and the others laugh softly. For a moment, the chamber feels lighter, more human. Even sacred duties allow for a joke. You smile too, though you're careful not to be heard. Laughter here seems like something to handle delicately, like fine sand. Later, when the temple quiets again, that same young attendant begins grinding a fresh batch of powder. You watch him measure ingredients by instinct. No scales, no written formulas, only memory and ritual. He adds a pinch of natron, a touch of myrrh, a whisper of crushed rose petals. Each movement is practiced, meditative. When he lifts his hands, the dust drifts through a beam of light like gold smoke. You realize then that this was more than hygiene. It was devotion disguised as routine. Every grain of powder, every breath, every whispered word was an offering to both gods and humanity. And yet, beneath the sacredness, there's an unshakable truth. The pharaoh's power extended even into the smallest motions of the day. Even brushing his teeth was an act of empire. His smile wasn't just beauty, it was control, a gleaming symbol of order in a world always threatening to dissolve into chaos. Still, as the scent of myrrh fades and the chants quiet down, you can't help but think of how oddly familiar it all feels. You too have your rituals, your morning coffee, your face in the mirror, your breath before a long day begins. Different tools, different gods perhaps, but the same yearning for purity, for starting the day clean. And as you walk away from the temple, the echoes of the chants linger in your ears, like the faint hum of a memory you can't quite place. Somewhere deep inside you feel it, the quiet power of small rituals, of beginnings made sacred, because even in the land of gods, the day starts the same way, with a breath, a brush, and a smile. The scent of honey still lingers in the air from the royal chambers you left behind. You follow a narrow stone corridor that hums faintly with echoes, footsteps, whispers, perhaps even the quiet chant of healers long gone. The deeper you go, the cooler it becomes. Somewhere above, the sun is burning white against the limestone walls. But down here, you step into the shade of another kind of temple, one not made for gods, but for teeth. You wouldn't think the ancient Egyptians had a word for dentistry, yet here it is before you, carved in small hieroglyphs beside a wooden chair, its arms worn smooth from centuries of anxious fingers. The priest who once sat here was not a prophet or a sculptor. He was, in a way, a craftsman of pain. They called him the one who deals with the mouth, and that sounded both respectful and vaguely terrifying. You can almost hear the sound, metal scraping against enamel, the low hum of a reed flute somewhere in the background to distract the patient. To imagine lying back on that hard wooden surface while a priest with a copper hook leans over you, muttering a prayer to Sekhmet, the lioness goddess of healing and destruction. You'd be praying too. The Egyptians knew toothaches well. Archaeologists found skulls with abscesses so large that even looking at them makes your jaw ache in sympathy. Bread was ground with tiny bits of sand. Even the richest pharaoh ended up chewing grit every day. You might have survived the desert heat and the Nile's moods, but not the slow betrayal of your own molars. And yet the priests tried. They mixed strange brews, powdered malachite and honey, barley mash with myrrh, sometimes even bits of copper to draw out the evil spirit. Some treatments worked. Others, well, let's just say that if you survived the cure, you earned a new level of holiness. The use of honey wasn't just symbolic. Its natural antiseptic power saved countless lives. The same honey they poured into offerings to Ra was also smeared on your aching gums. You can picture the priest dipping a reed brush into a clay bowl, whispering as he worked, the scent of sweetness blending with sweat and metal. At one point, you spot a small bronze tool lying near the altar, delicate, precise, almost elegant in its simplicity. A tiny hook on one end, flattened like a miniature spoon on the other. No drills, no anesthesia, no latex gloves, just faith, steady hands, and maybe a jar of beer to dull the edge. The patient probably didn't care about divine geometry or cosmic balance in that moment. They just wanted the pain to stop. There's a theory, and historians still argue about this, that Egyptian priests were among the first to attempt dental fillings. Some skulls show what looks like linen fibers stuffed into decayed cavities, sealed with resin. Maybe it was ritual, maybe it was proto-science. Either way, it's oddly comforting to think that someone thousands of years ago looked at a hole in a tooth and thought, I can fix that. The air down here smells faintly of copper and herbs. You brush your fingers along the cool stone, feeling shallow carvings of mouths and eyes, symbols of renewal, vision, and purity. You can imagine a line of patients sitting along this very wall, waiting for their turn. Some may have been commoners, others minor nobles. Toothache didn't care for social rank. The hum of chants, the occasional hiss of pain, the rhythmic clink of tools against clay bowls. It must have sounded like a ritual symphony of endurance. And then there's beer. Oh yes, beer. Egyptians drank it for almost everything. Hydration, celebration, medication. A priest-dentist might pour some over a wound or, more likely, into the patient. For courage, he'd say. The kind of courage that makes you let someone scrape your gums with copper wire while you stare at a wall painted with lotus flowers. You imagine one patient, a young worker from a quarry upriver. His teeth cracked from years of chewing coarse bread. He kneels before the priest, holding a small amulet of Hathor between trembling fingers. The priest nods, dips his tool into warm honey and begins. The man winces but doesn't scream. Perhaps he believes that with every pulse of pain, a little bit of impurity leaves his body. After all, the mouth was sacred, the gateway for breath, prayer, and offerings. Keeping it pure wasn't vanity. It was devotion. When you think about it, dentistry before drills wasn't just survival. It was faith wrapped in technique, a strange marriage of fear and care. They didn't separate the physical from the spiritual. Every infection was a curse, every cure a hymn, and somewhere between the chants and the sharp taste of metal, healing began. You step closer to an ancient basin carved from alabaster, smooth as glass. The faint traces of white powder still cling to its edges. Maybe it was tooth cleaning paste, maybe some early disinfectant. The same ingredients that made up their toothpaste, salt, myrrh, mint, could easily serve as treatment. The overlap between care and ritual feels so natural that you almost wonder if the modern world, with its sterile clinics and fluorescent lights, has lost something essential. There's another whisper of debate among scholars, whether these priestly healers extracted teeth at all. Some think they did, using metal tongs heated in fire. Others insist they only treated surface pain. The truth might lie buried somewhere between those two extremes. Either way, the courage of those early patients deserves a kind of quiet awe. You, with your electric toothbrush and minty foam, are the spoiled descendant of their grim endurance. You glance at the corner of the chamber, where a painted figure of a man kneels before Thoth, the god of wisdom. The man's mouth is open, light rays drawn into it like beams of gold. The message is simple and profound. Every word, every breath, every taste is divine. To care for the mouth was to honor the gods. Suddenly, the idea of dental care doesn't feel clinical anymore. It feels sacred. Outside, the sound of the Nile drifts faintly through the temple halls, like the heartbeat of the land itself. You step toward the light, the faint hum of bees and distant voices wrapping around you. Somewhere above, life goes on. Traders shouting, priests chanting, children laughing. None of them know that in this cool chamber, the seeds of dentistry were planted, and as you climb the stone steps back toward the sunlight, you can't help but smile. Carefully, of course. Your mind lingers on the thought that even before the age of drills and dental chairs, there were those who believed pain could be eased by patience, faith, and the steady rhythm of a human hand. Theirs was a kind of wisdom we still chase, the hope that even the smallest suffering can be met with care, ritual, and maybe a little honey. Somewhere behind you, the echo of a copper tool meets stone again, soft, precise, eternal. You follow the faint scent of salt and ash, drifting through the corridors of the temple. Outside, dawn spills its pale gold across the river Nile, and traders are already unloading their boats, sacks of something grey and powdery, glinting faintly in the light. You squint. It isn't grain. It isn't sand. It's ash, and not just any ash. This one comes from the far southern lands of Ethiopia, carried in jars wrapped with reeds and sealed with wax. You stand among the priests as they inspect the shipment. Their linen robes ripple in the early breeze, their voices low and precise. They lift small scoops of the ash to their noses, testing its sharpness, then nod with satisfaction. You realize that for these priests, this isn't simply trade. It's devotion through chemistry. The ash will be ground into the sacred powders, mixed with rock salt from the Libyan coast, and turned into something the gods themselves might envy, an elixir of purity for the teeth and the soul. You try to imagine how long it took for that ash to travel here, from forests where the air smells like honeyed smoke, across deserts where caravans moved slower than dreams, to this moment on the temple dock. Each grain tells of a trade network that hums beneath the surface of history. Egypt didn't just build pyramids, it built roads of trust, of spice, of salt and stone, and apparently of toothpaste ingredients. As the priests weigh the ash, a younger acolyte hands one of them a scroll. It's a record of imports. 1 amphora of ash from the south, 2 measures of sea salt, 1 pot of rose oil from Byblos. You catch yourself smiling. It sounds like an ancient shopping list, only instead of milk and cereal, they've written down essence of holiness, flavor of eternity. The Nile wind carries the smell of something briny and alive. A sailor nearby uncorks a jar, and you almost gag. It's fermented fish oil. For polishing teeth, he says proudly when you ask. You blink. Apparently, ancient Egyptians experimented far beyond minty freshness. Some mixtures combined burnt eggshells, honey, and even ground up ox hooves. You think about the mint toothpaste sitting in your bathroom and suddenly feel very, very grateful for the 21st century. Yet for them, these odd imports were worth their weight in gold. Salt from Libya was known to cleanse the mouth of the gods. The ash from Ethiopia, fine, silvery, and slightly aromatic, was believed to carry the breath of sacred fires. Myrrh from Punt gave fragrance to the paste, while crushed pumice from the Red Sea added a gritty texture for polishing enamel. Some priests swore by the sharp bite of natron, a natural soda crystal harvested from desert lakes. Others warned it could erode more than stains. It could erode humility. You follow the high priest into a shaded storeroom, its walls painted with maps of trade routes stretching across deserts and seas. Tiny figures march between symbols of ships and palm trees, carrying offerings and bundles. He gestures toward the murals, explaining how these routes were guarded not just by soldiers, but by stories. Traders carried tales of monsters in the dunes, spirits that punished deceitful merchants, and birds that could smell lies. You can't help but laugh softly. So basically ancient customer service, you whisper. The priest doesn't smile, but you think you see a flicker in his eyes. Maybe amusement, maybe warning. He picks up a small jar, taps its lid. Inside, a grayish powder swirls gently. This, he murmurs, is Ethiopia's fire. It cleans not only the tooth, but the word. You think about that. Clean speech, pure breath, truth spoken without rot. Perhaps oral hygiene had a double meaning here. To cleanse the mouth was to prepare for sacred words. In a world where breath carried prayers, fresh breath was holiness itself. You remember that some ancient writings mention how merchants offered tribute, not just in gold, but in recipes. A Babylonian trader once brought tooth salts as a diplomatic gift, hoping to gain favor at court. Historians still debate whether that story was literal or symbolic, but it fits, doesn't it? A civilization that worshipped cleanliness might very well see toothpaste as treasure. Outside, the sound of hammers and chanting mingle. A group of workers, their backs glistening with sweat, crushes new batches of ingredients. You notice the rhythm of their work. Grind, sift, hum. The same pace as a heartbeat. You pick up a pestle, feeling its weight. Smooth, cool, solid. As you press it into the mortar, you smell the mingling of salt and ash, a dry perfume of earth and ocean. You almost want to sneeze, but that would break the spell. Nearby, a small child helps his father label the jars with hieroglyphs: a tooth, a mouth, a lotus flower. The lotus, the priest explains, symbolizes rebirth. To cleanse the teeth, he says softly, is to renew oneself each day. You nod. There's something oddly poetic about brushing your teeth being a form of spiritual resurrection. Maybe that's why modern mornings feel incomplete without it. We've inherited more than we realize from them. Later, you join the traders around a small fire as the sun begins to fall. They share stories about their roots. One man describes crossing dunes so vast that the stars seem to move backward. Another recalls a night storm on the Mediterranean that flung amphorae of salt into the sea, turning the water even saltier. They laugh, sipping from clay cups of beer. The same beer, you recall, that priests once used to numb pain during dental procedures. You can't help but joke, so they brushed with ash and rinsed with beer. Sounds like college. The group erupts in laughter. For a brief moment, history feels less like a distant thing and more like a campfire tale shared between friends. But as the laughter fades, the high priest leans in and says something that hushes the circle. These powders, he whispers, travel farther than we do. They enter mouths, become words, and words become memory. You realize that trade wasn't just about goods. It was about spreading rituals, beliefs, and flavors of the sacred. A jar of Ethiopian ash wasn't just an import. It was an ambassador of culture. As the night deepens, you wander back toward the temple. Your steps slow, your thoughts heavier. The air smells of smoke and the faint sweetness of lotus oil. Somewhere in the darkness, you hear the rhythmic scrape of pestles, the eternal heartbeat of their craft. You think about how much of humanity's progress started with simple acts of care. Grinding, cleaning, preserving. Not conquest, not invention, but maintenance. The priests believed that even decay could be honored if you faced it with ritual. They cleaned the teeth of the dead, anointing them with powders so they could speak pure words in the afterlife. You picture a mummy wrapped in linen, with a faint trace of salt still on its lips, a final promise that no prayer would go unheard. And as you breathe in the silence, the ash dust seems to hang in the air, shimmering faintly in torchlight. You realize that what they traded wasn't just materials, it was intention. Across deserts and centuries, their faith in purity survived, one jar at a time. You smile imagining someone centuries from now opening your own toothpaste tube, wondering about its ingredients. Maybe in some way you're still part of that same story, still brushing away yesterday's dust with a ritual older than empires. The night folds around you, gentle as linen. You can still taste the salt of the Nile on your lips, and faintly, you hear the creak of ships departing for faraway shores, carrying the sacred powder toward new mouths, new prayers and new mornings. You wake to the sound of sandals brushing against the temple floor. The air feels different tonight, lighter, cooler. The scent of lotus oil drifts away, replaced by olive and resin. Foreign voices echo between the columns. You turn and see them, Greeks. Scholars, merchants and physicians from across the sea, wrapped in pale linen that looks too clean for this dust. They've come with questions, always questions, and the priests, serene as statues, welcome them with a slow nod. You realize this isn't just trade, it's an exchange of worlds. The Greeks come carrying scrolls and ideas, but here they are the students. The priests lead them through the dim corridors where the sacred powders are stored. Tiny alabaster jars line the walls, labeled with faint hieroglyphs. One Greek leans closer, squinting. He can't read the script, but his eyes glimmer with hunger, the kind of hunger that devours mystery. They are fascinated by the Egyptian art of cleanliness. To the Greeks, bathing is philosophy. To the Egyptians, it's devotion. When the priests speak of brushing teeth as purification of the soul, the Greeks whisper the word catharsis. You almost laugh. Two worlds finding the same meaning through different mouths. You watch as a young priest demonstrates the ancient recipe again: burnt salt, ground iris, pepper, and mint. He mixes it with a little water, then brushes the mixture onto a carved ivory stick. The Greek scribes scribble furiously. One of them grimaces when he tastes it. Too sharp, too bitter. He mutters something about adding crushed oyster shells for texture. You think, yeah, that'll definitely make mornings more exciting. The exchange goes both ways. The Greeks bring wine and honey, suggesting they could sweeten the mixture. The priests hesitate. Sweetness feels wrong. The goal isn't pleasure, it's purification. Still, curiosity wins. They test the Greek version. The result? It foams better. The room fills with the smell of mint and fermenting honey. A bizarre but strangely pleasant blend. You imagine someone in Athens bragging later. Egyptian toothpaste improved with a touch of Greek genius, but you can sense the tension beneath the laughter. To the priests, this ritual isn't just dental hygiene, it's communion with Ma'at, the balance of the universe. To reduce it to a recipe feels like reducing prayer to a list of ingredients. One priest murmurs, "Knowledge shared too easily loses its weight." You wonder how many secrets the sands have swallowed for this very reason. The Greeks, however, aren't here for faith. They're here for the body. They dissect, debate, redefine. A philosopher named Demetrios sketches a molar on his wax tablet, labeling the parts like a geographer charting new land. He calls it the Temple of Chewing. You can't help but smile. Sounds like something a poet would write after 3 cups of wine. In the evenings, the visitors sit by the Nile and argue under the stars. One insists that health comes from balance: earth, air, fire, and water. Another argues the Egyptians are closer to truth. Cleanliness keeps the spirit light. A priest listens quietly, stirring a bowl of salt and ash. He doesn't interrupt. When he finally speaks, he says, "The mouth is the gate of truth. Keep it clean and your words will be pure." The Greeks fall silent. For a moment, philosophy meets prayer. The next morning, you wander into the courtyard where a few jars have been left open to dry. The mixture inside glitters like pale dust. A breeze carries a pinch into your face. It stings your tongue, a sharp shock of salt and spice. You think about the strange partnership unfolding here: religion teaching science and science redefining ritual. Later, you overhear one of the Greek visitors promising to bring this knowledge back to Kos, the island of physicians. He says he'll teach it to his master, Hippocrates. The Egyptians, he says, They understand the body as a temple. You almost whisper you have no idea how literal that is. Some nights the foreigners join the priests for prayer. They mimic the chants clumsily, their accents bending the sacred words. Yet something stirs in the air. Perhaps the gods don't mind the sound of new voices. The temple glows under oil lamps, the shadows of two worlds weaving together like strands of linen. Of course, not everyone approves. A high priest frowns at this mingling. He warns the younger ones that the Greeks will twist divine knowledge into mere trade. They will put our secrets in markets, he says. They will sell purity in jars. You can't deny he's right. Centuries later, toothpaste will indeed be sold in shiny tubes, mint-flavored and mass-produced. If only he could see that future. He'd probably faint, and yet there's beauty in this exchange. Civilization moves like the Nile, sometimes calm, sometimes muddy, always carrying fragments of what came before. The first Greek recipe for tooth powder will borrow salt from Egypt, mint from Syria, and oyster shell from the Aegean. In a few generations it will reach Rome, where senators will debate whether teeth should gleam like marble or ivory. Human vanity, it seems, never changes. You imagine the scene fading, the Greeks departing with scrolls and clay jars, their ships heavy with knowledge and spices. The priests stand on the shore, robes fluttering in the desert wind, watching as the sails shrink against the horizon. They don't wave. They don't need to. The Nile has seen too many comings and goings to be surprised anymore. As the temple grows quiet again, you notice the grinding bowls stacked neatly in corners, their dust settling like memory. The young priest, the one who taught the Greeks, traces his finger through the powder and whispers a small prayer. Not for loss, but for continuity. He knows that somewhere someone will remember. The scent of mint lingers in the air long after they're gone, blending with the incense smoke. You taste it faintly on your tongue, cool, ancient, and oddly human. The world will keep reinventing this simple ritual, calling it science, calling it habit. But here in the dim light of the temple, brushing one's teeth is still a way of touching eternity. And as you step away from the scene, the thought drifts softly through your mind. Between faith and curiosity, between Egypt and Greece, perhaps the first true smile of civilization was born. The night hums with quiet, like parchment breathing under the weight of centuries. You find yourself in a room smaller than the great halls you've walked through, intimate, cluttered, alive with the scent of ink, reeds, and candle smoke. The air is heavy, dry as powdered chalk. A single priest sits hunched over a papyrus scroll, his fingers stained with soot. You hear the faint scratch of his reed pen moving across the sheet, each stroke a whisper of devotion. He's not writing a prayer tonight. He's recording a recipe. You lean closer, watching him as he dips the pen again and again into a shallow bowl of ink. His lips move in rhythm, almost as if the act of writing itself is sacred. On the papyrus, symbols dance. Rows of tiny birds, arms, and rippling lines that describe something oddly familiar. Salt, pepper, crushed flowers, and a pinch of burnt ash. The world's first written toothpaste formula. You can't help but smile. Humanity has written poems, hymns, and epics, but even before some of those, we wrote about how to keep our teeth clean. Priorities. The priest pauses, squinting at his work. His name, you learn, is Psenmut, one of the scribes assigned to the House of Life, the temple's secret archive of medicine. His task is to copy older prescriptions for the next generation of healers. And tonight he's chosen this one, a formula said to have been blessed by Thoth himself. He murmurs the ingredients softly. 1 part rock salt, 1 part mint leaves, 1 part dried iris flower, 1 part pepper. Then, in smaller script, he adds a personal note in the margin. His hand trembles slightly as he writes it. It stings the mouth but cleans well. You laugh quietly to yourself. Even 4,000 years ago, someone was complaining about toothpaste being too spicy. The candle flickers. Psenmut leans back and stretches, joints cracking like dry papyrus. Around him are piles of other scrolls, each recording mixtures for healing. Balms for burns, powders for stomach aches, salves for snake bites. But among them, the dental ones seem special. Their edges are worn smooth, their titles smudged, as if they've been copied again and again. You realize this isn't vanity. This is continuity. He rolls the papyrus gently, ties it with linen string and marks it with a tiny seal, a human mouth framed by lotus petals. The Gate of Purity, it's called. In Egyptian belief, The mouth isn't just for eating or speaking. It's the entryway for truth itself. To keep it clean was to keep the soul uncorrupted. You drift closer as he places the scroll on a wooden shelf among dozens of others. He whispers a short prayer to Thoth, the god of wisdom and writing. Let ink remember what lips forget. The phrase lingers in your head long after he says it. A second priest enters, yawning, holding a small clay bowl filled with a grayish paste. Taste this, he says. It's the new version. Senmut hesitates. You can feel the moment. He knows what's coming. But he dips a finger anyway, touches it to his tongue and grimaces. Still too strong, he mutters. The other priest laughs. Then write that down. The scribe chuckles, obediently adding another note beneath his neat columns. Too strong. Use less salt next time. There's something beautifully human about it, a tiny piece of personality preserved for millennia. Not just the formula, but the feeling. Outside, you hear the croak of frogs from the Nile. Night is slipping deeper. You picture the scrolls multiplying across centuries, copied by hand, each with its own fingerprint of mistakes and improvements. Some versions will add myrrh for scent. Others will replace pepper with cinnamon. One will even suggest honey for sweetness, though that version will be short-lived. It attracts ants. History is full of trial and error, even in hygiene. You drift among the shelves, eyes gliding over the papyrus labels. Papyrus Ebers, Papyrus Edwin Smith, Papyrus Hearst. The future will name them after their discoverers. But here, they're just records of the living. You brush a finger across one labeled simply for the teeth of pain. The symbols beneath describe a cure involving ground barley and donkey milk. You wince. Ancient innovation, you whisper. Modern regret. The priests worked in rhythm with faith. They didn't see themselves as scientists, but servants of balance. Their medicines weren't experiments. They were prayers that happened to work. And yet within their reverence lies something profoundly rational. The papyri show measurements, proportions, and even notes about side effects. You realize the birth of science wasn't a rebellion against religion. It was a conversation within it. You hear Senmut sigh. People forget how fragile memory is, he says softly, maybe to himself, maybe to you. Ink lasts longer than flesh. He glances at the stacked scrolls. But even ink fades. He doesn't know it yet, but centuries from now, fire will devour much of his life's work when the Library of Alexandria burns. Most of these prescriptions will vanish into ash. And yet a few fragments, just enough, will survive in tombs hidden beside mummies. The gods, it seems, had a habit of misplacing things safely. Senmut dips his pen again and continues writing, steady now, almost meditative. You notice how he draws each hieroglyph with care. The bird symbols are delicate, the lines crisp. There's art in this science, beauty in the precision. The word for tooth is drawn like a tiny row of steps. Fitting. You think, since humanity is always climbing toward understanding. One detail at a time, he finally finishes, leans back and blows gently to dry the ink. Then, without ceremony, he rolls the papyrus and tucks it into a small chest. Tomorrow another scribe will copy it again, and another after him. Knowledge passed down like breath from one generation to the next. You can almost feel the weight of it, the centuries of care, of small corrections, of someone somewhere, adding a note that says, works better if used before sunrise. You picture a chain of hands stretching from this dim temple all the way to the modern bathroom sink. The same impulse connecting them. To wash, to cleanse, to start anew. The candle flickers low, melting into a puddle of gold wax. Senmut rests his chin in his palm, half asleep, surrounded by his scrolls. The room smells faintly of mint and smoke. You feel time blur around you, the rustle of papyrus becoming the whisper of printed pages, the reed pen becoming the hum of an electric toothbrush. The sound different, but the purpose the same, and as the night deepens, you sense something gentle in the air, a quiet reverence for the ordinary act of care. You think of that little note again. It stings the mouth but cleans well. Maybe that's what all of history feels like, a sting that purifies, a discomfort that teaches. Somewhere under layers of sand and silence, Senmut's ink still sleeps on a fragile scroll waiting to be found, waiting to remind someone that even in the ancient world, humans wrote their prayers in salt and ash, and meant them. You watch the priest's hands hover over the small alabaster bowl, the same one you've seen him use to mix the sacred powders. But tonight there's something different. The lamps burn lower, their flames flickering in uncertain rhythm, and the scent of resin feels thicker, like the air itself is trying to listen. The old man begins to murmur words that don't quite sound like prayers. You realize it's not just a mixture of herbs and salt, it's a spell folded carefully between the layers of medicine. The Egyptians never separated the two. Healing wasn't only a question of knowledge, it was an act of faith. Every grain of powder, every drop of oil, every chant that trembled through the stone halls carried a purpose beyond the body. You lean closer and notice symbols etched along the rim of the bowl, tiny hieroglyphs of eyes, stars, and teeth. The Eye of Horus, the eternal emblem of protection, stares back at you carved into smooth limestone. The priest's lips form its name, and for a moment, you feel the weight of centuries of belief pressing softly against your chest. He adds crushed myrrh, the same fragrant resin you've smelled in temples and tombs, into the mix. The paste darkens, turning from beige to amber. Protection for the breath, he whispers, as if the gods themselves might catch a whiff and judge his recipe. Then a pinch of natron salt, sharp and cold against the humid air. Purity for the soul. You realize you're witnessing the moment where medicine becomes ritual, and ritual becomes medicine. Some scholars, thousands of years later, will still argue whether this was superstition or science. Were these priests true healers, or clever performers cloaked in incense smoke? Perhaps both. After all, it's not so different from modern pharmacies. Bright lights, white coats, whispered hopes. You can almost imagine an ancient pharmacist in linen robes offering a small clay jar saying, "Twice a day, and may Ra watch over your gums." The priest reaches for a strip of papyrus covered in dark ink. The script bends and loops gracefully, a prayer mixed with a recipe. "If your tooth aches," it reads, "speak these words, O tooth, O bone, O pain that dwells, leave the body of the servant of Isis. Then rub with the mixture of ground salt, iris petals, and honey." Honey, yes, the same sweet remedy that modern dentists praise for its antibacterial power. You smile to yourself. Maybe the ancients were onto something. He looks up and catches your expression, that faint, amused disbelief, and gives a dry chuckle, like wind scraping through sand. "You think this foolish traveler?" His eyes seem to say, but you don't. You're just amazed by how human it all feels. The fear of pain, the hope for relief, the small ritual of care before facing the day. Some things never change, even after 4,000 years. A young apprentice enters carrying a small wooden box tied with cord. Inside are amulets shaped like teeth, carved from bone, polished with oil. Each bears a single line of inscription, Sa protection. These charms were often buried with the dead, meant to guard against decay even in the afterlife. You can't help but laugh softly. "Talk about dental insurance," you whisper, but to them it was sacred business. The mouth was not just the entrance to the body, it was the gateway of the soul. When priests cleaned the statues of gods each dawn, they brushed the lips first, whispering that the divine mouth must be opened to speak blessings again. The same tools, the same motions, mirrored what they did to their own bodies. The act of brushing became a prayer, the act of healing a kind of worship. In the quiet corners of the temple, jars line the shelves, powders labeled with symbols, salt for cleansing, ash for strength, mint for the breath of life, and hematite dust to bind the words of protection. It's hard to tell where the laboratory ends and the shrine begins. You notice a faint shimmer in the torchlight, small copper mirrors hanging above the jars reflecting the glow. Maybe they were meant to scare away spirits, or maybe, like us, they just wanted to see if their teeth were still white. A papyrus fragment found centuries later will note, "In the margin of a healer's text, this mixture worked best during the full moon." A modern archaeologist will smile at that. How quaint, she'll think. But somewhere deep down she'll understand. Because every scientist, every doctor, carries a little superstition, a small private ritual before a difficult task. The ancients just said theirs out loud. As you follow the priest deeper into the sanctum, you pass a mural depicting Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, offering a cup to a kneeling human. The caption reads, "He gives healing to those who speak truth." You wonder if that's the real secret ingredient, honesty. Not just with the gods, but with oneself. The priest dips his finger into the paste and smears a thin line along his lower lip. "For clarity of speech," he murmurs. He motions for you to try. The taste is sharp, earthy, with a spark of heat from the pepper seeds ground into the mix. It stings your tongue, then fades into a cool, resinous calm. You feel as though your breath belongs to another time, each exhale carrying the scent of ancient faith. Somewhere outside, the Nile sighs, slow and endless. You remember earlier the jars, the laughter, the mirrored shelves, and you think about how thin the line is between faith and formula. Maybe that's the heart of it. Belief gives power to the remedy, and care gives purpose to the belief. Whether it's a priest whispering to a jar of powder or a scientist adjusting a microscope, both are reaching for the same thing: comfort in the face of uncertainty. The lamps begin to fade. The priest's voice lowers to a hum, a single thread of sound winding between the stones. He places the bowl before the statue of Sekhmet, goddess of healing and fierce protector of life. Her lioness face glows in the wavering light. To heal, he says, one must first believe that healing is possible. Outside, the desert night settles in, soft and heavy, full of unseen movement. You walk past the rows of sleeping apprentices, their mouths faintly shining with resin and salt. The scent of myrrh lingers, clinging to your skin like a memory. You realize that magic and medicine were never enemies here. They were siblings, two halves of the same prayer. And as you step out under the stars, you catch yourself whispering the old words without even meaning to, your breath tracing a line between worlds. Somewhere in the dark, the gods might still be listening. You wake before dawn to the sound of crackling, faint, distant, like dry reeds breaking underfoot. But it isn't reeds. It's parchment burning. The air is heavy, thick with the scent of old oil and ink. And somewhere in the distance, you hear the waves of the Mediterranean beating against the harbor wall, as if trying to warn the city too late. Alexandria is on fire. You step outside into the rose-grey morning and the world feels unreal. The library, that vast mind of humanity, wrapped in smoke. You can almost see the scrolls curling, the ink twisting like veins under flame. Thousands of years of knowledge flickering into ghostlight. You think of all the things that must have been lost. Songs, equations, recipes, even the ones for toothpaste. Somewhere near the temple quarter, far from the main blaze, a young scribe is clutching a small papyrus scroll to his chest. You follow him through the narrow alleys, feet slapping against the mosaic floor still wet with morning dew. He's breathing hard, eyes wild. Not because of fear, but because of love. The kind of love only someone who's copied words for 20 years could feel. They'll burn it all, he mutters. Even the small things. He stops in front of a marble basin, looks around, then dips the scroll into water. The ink bleeds like blood, the words vanishing under the surface. He whispers, "Better washed away by the Nile than lost to greed." You feel a pang, a strange sorrow for something so simple. A recipe written by a priest for clean teeth and pure breath, now dissolving into nothing. That's the cruel beauty of history. What survives isn't always what mattered most. Later, when the fire dies and the ashes cool, scholars will walk among the ruins of the library, lifting blackened scrolls with trembling hands. Some will crumble at the touch. Others, half legible, will reveal strange fragments. Mix with water from the sacred well, grind until the sun rises. Offer thanks to Thoth before use. Tiny pieces of a much larger story. You find yourself imagining what those recipes were like. The careful handwriting. The notes in the margins. Don't use too much pepper. It stings. The soft sigh of the brush as it met the papyrus. Each scroll must have carried a piece of a person. Their trial and error, their hopes for healing, their small experiments. It's not just science that burned that day. It was memory, warmth, domestic life. You pause and realize these weren't just chemical formulas. They were acts of devotion. To write something down in that age meant you believed it was worth remembering forever. And now forever has gone up in smoke. There's a legend, whispered centuries later by monks, that one of the Egyptian scribes, realizing what was happening, took a handful of the recipes and buried them under the floor of his home. No one ever found them, but it comforts you to think they might still be there, sealed in clay, waiting. A little piece of toothpaste history, hiding like treasure beneath the sand. Historians still argue about what truly caused the destruction. Was it Caesar's troops, or later conflicts, or simply the slow decay of time? The truth, as always, is somewhere in between. Maybe it wasn't one fire, but many, each taking a little more until all that remained were stories. Like this one. You wander into what's left of the scribe's quarter. Bits of shelves, charred scroll racks, shards of amphorae glinting in the soot. The silence hums. The city still breathes, but softer now. The sea wind carries the scent of burnt papyrus, sharp, sweet, and bitter all at once. Do you imagine those lost recipes floating invisibly through the air, drifting out over the water? Maybe somewhere the gods of memory caught them. A surviving record mentions something odd. Among the scrolls were found notes on preserving powders with honey to endure the desert heat. You can't help but smile. That sounds like an early form of packaging. Ancient toothpaste preservation. The Egyptians always thought ahead. Nearby, a priest is sitting among the rubble, humming to himself as he grinds what looks like salt and mint leaves in a small mortar. The gesture feels defiant, almost holy. The fire takes the words, he says softly, but the hands remember. You realize he's right. Even if the scrolls vanish, the knowledge lives on, passed from hand to hand, mouth to mouth, as quietly as a prayer. You think about how many recipes must have been reborn in this way, remade from memory, adjusted, whispered again. Maybe the mixture changed a little each time, but the spirit stayed the same. That's how traditions survive. Not through ink, but through care. The priest smiles faintly as he works. Write if you can, he murmurs, but if you cannot, teach someone who will remember. You wonder how many of his students carried those words, not just on scrolls, but in their bones. Centuries later, travelers would dig near the ruins of Alexandria and find bits of pottery coated with white dust. They thought it was paint. Later, chemical tests revealed traces of ash, rock salt, and crushed flowers. Maybe the ghost of an ancient recipe had clung there all along. Somewhere between myth and memory, the library still burns. You can almost see it from where you stand. Flames flickering in the corner of your imagination. And in those flames you catch glimpses of small ordinary things. A child learning to write. A healer measuring salt with the tip of a reed spoon. A scribe drawing a perfect little tooth on the margin of his page. All gone, and yet, still here. It makes you wonder, what will survive of us? Our formulas, our data, our tutorials on whitening teeth in 60 seconds, or the quiet knowledge that someone somewhere once cared enough to write things down by hand. The sea wind grows cooler. The city darkens again, this time from dusk rather than smoke. You walk along the shore, and the sand glitters faintly as if the ashes of the library have mixed with starlight. You taste salt on your lips and think of the old priest's words. The hands remember. And as you look back one last time toward the ruins, you imagine faint scratching sounds, quills moving, pages turning, scrolls being unrolled somewhere beneath the earth. Maybe knowledge never really dies. It just hides, waiting for the curious to listen again. You smile. After all, who would have guessed that one day, thousands of years later, we'd still be talking about the world's first toothpaste and the people who cared enough to write it down. Some memories, it seems, refuse to brush away. The sand around you feels warmer tonight, as if the desert itself is remembering. You follow the soft glow of lanterns deeper into the excavation site. Tents rustling, brushes whispering against stone. The air smells faintly of dust and old linen, that dry sweetness of history waking up. Somewhere ahead, an archaeologist laughs quietly, holding something small in her hand. A clay jar sealed with time. Inside, a fine powder shimmers, pale, almost silky. No gold, no jewels. Yet everyone is staring like they found a treasure. They have the label on the jar, traced in faint hieroglyphs, mentions, "For the cleansing of the mouth before dawn." And suddenly, you're there again, in the temple, with priests grinding salt and ash, murmuring to the gods. But now the noise of modern Cairo hums in the distance. Thousands of years apart, and still, humans kneel before mirrors, searching for purity in routine. The archaeologists call it tooth powder, but the truth feels deeper, almost spiritual. You watch as a scientist opens the lid carefully, the grains inside clinging to her gloves. Under the microscope, she finds traces of natron, a kind of natural soda, mixed with crushed myrrh and maybe faintly dried mint. It's almost exactly like the recipe mentioned in the Ebers papyrus, except this one feels personal, refined, the work of a careful hand, perhaps a temple healer's own formula. One of the researchers, half joking, mixes a tiny portion with water and rubs it gently on her teeth. She winces. It's gritty, salty, with a bitter aftertaste of resin. But when she smiles, there's a kind of pride in her eyes. History, it seems, can still sting a little. You crouch beside the ancient bowl, noticing how the texture of the powder glows under the tent light. It's strange how something meant for cleaning could survive so long buried in dirt. Maybe that's the quiet joke time keeps telling. Everything pure must first endure decay. The archaeologists photograph the jars, label them with careful handwriting. Tooth cleaning compound, 4th dynasty, approx 2500 BCE. But no label can capture the scent. Faint. Resinous, the ghost of incense trapped in clay. Later, back at camp, the team debates around a table covered in notebooks and half-eaten biscuits. Why would they put so much effort into this? Someone asks. It's just hygiene. But another archaeologist shakes her head. Not in Egypt, she says softly. To them, cleanliness was holiness. Even a mouth could carry prayer. You imagine the priest would have smiled at that, their secret art rediscovered by strangers from another age. Some historians still argue whether the Egyptians invented toothpaste or merely stumbled upon it by accident while experimenting with medicine. Others think it began as a ritual powder, used to freshen breath before ceremonies. But standing in that tent, listening to the quiet hum of generators and desert wind, you can almost sense the answer. It was never just about teeth. It was about the soul's reflection in small acts. The next morning, sunlight spills across the site like liquid gold. Cameras flash as a team member carefully lifts a polished mirror fragment from the same chamber. Its surface is dull, but when tilted it catches the light. And for a heartbeat, it's as if someone long gone is looking back. You can almost hear a whisper. Do not forget the small rituals. They are what make the days sacred. You brush a bit of sand from your sleeve, smiling. Modern people spend fortunes chasing natural toothpaste, but here it is, the original recipe, 4,500 years old, without branding or plastic. It feels both humbling and funny. If the priests could see a supermarket aisle now, hundreds of tubes boasting whitening, freshness, charcoal, they'd probably shrug and say, "We did it first." The scientists pack the jars into padded cases, ready for transport to Cairo, yet, before sealing them, one of them pauses, lost in thought. "You know," she murmurs, "it's beautiful how they cared for the body with such reverence. It wasn't vanity, it was devotion." Her words linger in the air like incense smoke. You walk outside as evening falls again. The wind carries a dry sweetness, maybe from nearby tamarisk trees, maybe just imagination. The horizon glows orange, then violet, then deep indigo. Somewhere under your feet, more jars may be waiting, more fragments of habits forgotten. You picture the ancient priests, their hands patient and steady, grinding, mixing, whispering. The same rhythm repeats: brush, rinse, breathe, pray. It's almost funny how the simplest acts travel across millennia. Brushing your teeth tonight, under the soft hum of your bathroom fan, you might be doing exactly what they did. Minus the ashes and pepper, thankfully. History doesn't vanish. It lingers in gestures. As you linger at the edge of the excavation, night fully takes over. The tents glow like lanterns on a dark sea of sand. Someone plays a quiet tune on their phone, and laughter drifts across the dunes. Yet beneath all that you feel it, the pulse of something ancient, steady as the Nile. Every handful of dust here hides a memory of care, of reverence, of the strange beauty in ordinary rituals. You turn one last time toward the buried temple. The stars above shimmer like grains of salt scattered on black silk. Maybe somewhere deep below, the last priest of the temple still whispers his prayer. Not for gold, not for fame, but for purity that endures tomorrow. These findings will make headlines, and people will scroll past them on glowing screens. But tonight, out here, it feels personal. Like the earth itself just shared a secret about what it means to be human. And as you breathe in that quiet, ancient air, you realize, we've always been brushing away the dust, trying to shine a little light on our teeth, our hearts, our histories, the desert sighs. The lanterns flicker. You close your eyes, hearing again the faint sound of grinding, salt, ash, myrrh, echoing softly beneath the sand. Even the air seems to hum softly, a long, steady breath drawn across the dunes. You stand where the sand meets the ruins, a faint moonlight brushing over the old temple stones. The night feels endless, quiet enough that you can almost hear the soft rhythm of ancient hands grinding salt and ash again, that same lullaby of work and devotion that began everything. Somewhere deep below, beyond the reach of shovels and flashlights, the echoes of those gestures still linger. You walk slowly, tracing your fingers over the weathered carvings. Each mark tells a story. The curve of a lotus, the faint outline of a priest. The hieroglyph for purity. They have no sound. Yet you can feel the weight of voices once filling this space. Murmured prayers, whispered formulas, laughter, maybe even complaints about how bitter the toothpaste tasted. It's strange how something so ordinary could live forever, sealed beneath sand instead of memory. The wind stirs and the smell of warm dust rises. You can almost taste the mineral tang in the air. It reminds you of that ancient powder, ground from salt and stone. Maybe that's what memory is. Not sound or sight, but a flavor that lingers in the back of your mind. You sit on a low step and close your eyes. The world blurs for a moment. The temple rebuilds itself around you. Columns upright, fires glowing, priests moving like shadows in the smoke. They're singing, their voices blending with the hush of the Nile. One of them, perhaps the young man you once followed, is kneeling, brushing the teeth of a statue with reverence, as though each stroke could awaken a god. You realize this was never just hygiene. It was a way to speak to the divine through care. You open your eyes and the illusion fades. Only stars now. Still, that devotion remains, unchanged, only quieter. The same impulse drives you each morning when you stand before your mirror, water running, brushing absent-mindedly while half asleep. You're not thinking of the Nile or of the gods or of ancient rituals, but perhaps deep down you're part of the same lineage, one of countless humans who believed that tending to the small things kept the world in balance. Some historians still argue about it, whether toothpaste was an Egyptian invention or a shared discovery of early civilizations. But standing here, that question feels small. It isn't about who was first. It's about who cared enough to begin, to grind herbs by hand, to test a mixture that stung but worked, to make something gentle out of earth and time. That, you think, is the heart of every human story. The urge to improve, to cleanse, to honor the ordinary. A low rustle carries through the ruins, almost like a sigh. The desert doesn't mourn what's gone. It keeps it patiently. Every grain of sand once touched by a life, every gust of wind passing through old corridors, they're all part of one long breath. You feel it now. That same rhythm threading through centuries, connecting your heartbeat to the hum of the earth. You smile at the thought. Maybe those priests never meant to leave behind history or innovation. Maybe they only wanted to do their jobs well, to serve, to keep beauty alive in small acts. They didn't know they were inventing toothpaste. They were simply showing love through precision. And that perhaps is the lesson buried beneath all this dust. Greatness hides inside the ordinary, waiting for someone to treat it with reverence. The stars scatter brighter now, like bits of crushed salt flung across velvet. You imagine the pharaohs looking up at the same sky, their mouths clean and breath fragrant with myrrh, wondering the same questions you do. How to stay pure in a world full of change, how to hold on to what matters when everything shifts like sand. The answer, you realize, has always been simple. You start small. You care deeply, the night deepens. The archaeologists have gone. The wind carries only silence now, folding around you like a blanket. You picture the temple fading into dust, the jars of powder sealed again under time's careful hand. The priests are gone, the gods are quiet, but their devotion hums on in every ritual that humans still perform without knowing why. Washing your hands, lighting a candle, saying a name softly before sleep. You breathe in, feeling that ancient rhythm slow your pulse. There's comfort in knowing you are not so different from them. Just another soul trying to make sense of life through small gestures. Maybe that's all history ever was. A mirror reminding you that you're never alone in the search for meaning. The wind sighs again, softer this time, almost kind. The dunes shimmer faintly in moonlight, endless and still. Beneath them, the echoes rest and not gone, just waiting. And in that silence, something stirs within you. Gratitude. For the hands that mixed salt and ash, for the minds that cared about details, for the stories that survived simply because someone thought they mattered. You lean back, feeling the sand cradle you. The horizon blurs. The stars soften. You think about how fragile everything is. Bones, jars, words, yet how some things endure anyway. Maybe that's the secret the priest knew all along, that immortality isn't about being remembered, but about doing something worth repeating, even if no one notices. The desert exhales one last warm breath and you let your eyes close. The hum of the earth deepens, wrapping around you like the echo of a lullaby. Somewhere far away, a chisel strikes stone, Somewhere closer, a brush sweeps sand. The world keeps cleaning itself endlessly, reverently, and as sleep pulls you under, the last sound you hear is the soft, rhythmic grinding. Salt, ash, purr, like the heartbeat of time itself whispering through the dunes. Everything sacred begins small. End of script. Sweet dreams.